be the #1 best instant stain remover brand. So I wanted to just test and see if it really was. Their claim is only based on sales. So I took the time to test and make sure and see what type of brand really worked the best. And I'm just going to pass around the 4 brands that I actually used, if you don't want to pass them around. Okay, so my first null hypothesis was that there would be no difference in each brand of instant stain remover's ability to dissolve the actual stain. And then my second null hypothesis, which to me was the most important, was there will be no difference in the time that it takes each brand of the instant stain remover to dissolve a stain. And I worked really hard to hopefully reject these. Well, not the first one. I wanted to claim that all of them had the ability to remove the stain, but the second null hypothesis, I wanted to reject it. Okay, so what's being passed around right now is the 4 different brands that I use of instant stain remover. The first one was the Tide to Go pen, and it has more of a marker tip. If you open it up and look at it, it's just a marker in that, it's not really a marker though, it's like plastic, and you push it and it releases the solution, and then you just scrub with the marker tip. For the Dry L On The Go pen, it has more of a like scrubber flimsy tip. And you all need to open that up because I really want everyone to see what the end of that one looks like. And then I used Shout Wipe and Go, which is just like a little towelette. And then the final one that I used is the Clorox 2 Stain Fighter pen. And all these were tested on white Fruit of the Loom t-shirts. And I used these 4 different stain substances. I kind of looked up the most common types of stains that most people get on their shirt. And the 4 that I came up with were Hunt's ketchup, or just ketchup in general, but I used Hunt's ketchup. Grape juice, and I used the Great Value brand. Foundation for us girls, and I used Rimmel London, and then I used a blue highlighter pen. Okay, so I ran into a small problem. If you all look at the Clorox 2 Stain Fighter pen, which is actually huge, and no one would want to carry that in their purse or pocket anyways, I found out that it wasn't an instant stain remover. It's more of a laundry pre-treatment gel. It's just something that you put on a stain about 10 minutes before you put it in the washer. So, Stain Fighter, I got really confused. Whenever I was looking up instant stain removers, it popped up on Google. I claimed this is one of the products that I wanted to test, and it let me down. I read the directions, and it's on the pen too, and it says unscrew cap and apply. I was like, okay, yeah, this is an instant stain remover. Well, if you read in the laundry, that's where it says apply 10 minutes before you put it in the washer. So therefore, that means it's not an instant stain remover. So I removed that from my test. And this video is just a preview of how I did my experiment. This was ketchup, and I used the Shout Wipe and Go. It's not going to work. Okay, apparently us 3 over at the first table don't know how to embed video. Okay, so moving on. The first stain that I tested was liquid foundation. And as you can see, I had not available on all 4 of my first trials for each instant stain remover brand. I just included the Clorox 2, but all of these are going to say not available. But, so for my liquid foundation, I tried to get smaller and smaller and smaller with my stain on a t-shirt. And every time, each one of these brands did not want to remove the foundation, like no matter what. So finally, my 5th trial, I literally put the absolute smallest stain possible on the t-shirt. And after 92.9 seconds, the Tide to Go pen finally removed the stain. And the Dry L pen removed it in 42.66 seconds. And then the Shout Wipe and Go, it just wouldn't remove it. It smeared it. And this picture up here, I forgot to say, this was my control. I didn't use any of the stain fighter on it. This is my Shout Wipe and Go. As you can tell, it kind of just smeared the stain, like I said. and by the way, this wasn't the last one, this was one of my first jobs. It seemed to just like keep it there, didn't really do anything. And then the dry out pen, you can see it removed it the best, but it was still clearly visible. So my second stain that I tested was the grape juice. And some observations that I made while I was removing these stains were that the dry out pen, for some reason, turned the grape juice stain a grayish color before it dissolved it. Don't know why, I just wanted to throw that out there. And then I noticed too that seconds matter. Whenever you remove a grape juice stain, you want to remove it in like the first 30 seconds that's on your t-shirt, first minute. Because after that, there was one time, I didn't list it in my data, but I had the stain on there for like 5 minutes and it did not want to remove. So time really matters, and down to the seconds it matters. So as you can see, the Shout Wipe and Go removed the grape juice the best. The Tidy Go pen came second, and the Dry Out pen came a close third compared to the Tidy Go. Okay, my third stain that I tested was ketchup, and this seemed to be the overall easiest stain for the three to remove. And for some reason, the Shout wipes seemed to once again smear the stains. It didn't do as good as the other two, Tidy Go and Dry Out pen, but all of them were a close, had the close same ability to remove the stain in the same amount of time. And then the last stain that I attempted to remove was blue fluorescent highlighter marker. And some observations that I made during this analysis was that it was definitely the easiest for the dry out pen to remove, and it was almost effortless. Also, it was the most difficult for the Shout Wipe and the Tidy Go pen to remove. I'm not really sure why there was such a crazy variance between the dry out pen and then these two. These were really, really close within 2 seconds, and the dry out pen 29 seconds. I had no idea why it was the fastest. So, for my final results, I ended up combining all of my data from each stain except for the liquid foundation, because you can't really predict what type of stain you're going to get on your t-shirt. So if I average out all these values, it's just going to kind of average out the type of stain that you're going to get. So I didn't include the two values that I got for the dry yellow pen and the Tidy Go pen that they got on the foundation marker, because Shout Wipe and Go didn't even have a value, it couldn't remove it. And I knew if I included those two times, it would skew the data, because Shout Wipe and Go would actually have a longer time. So, on average, dry out on the Go pen had a 34.8 second time that it took to remove a stain. In second came Shout Wipe and Go, and it took 43.41 seconds on average to remove a stain. And the Tidy Go pen took an average of 47.09 seconds to remove a stain. So on to my analysis. I did a t-test. I did 3 independent t-tests, and the first one that I did was Shout Wipe and Go versus the Tidy Go pen. This was just a data set from I had 15 data values for each instant stain remover. I listed the mean, standard deviation, standard error. I came up with a p-value of 0.551. And we all know you need a p-value of less than 0.05 to reject the null, so I failed to reject my null hypothesis. The second t-test that I did was between Shout Wipe and Go and the Dry Out on the Go pen. Once again, I had 15 values for each, and I concluded with about p-value of 0.099, which is kind of close to 0.05, but it's not less than, so I failed to reject that null hypothesis. And finally, my last t-test was between the Tidy Go pen and the Dry Out on the Go. And as you can see, my final p-value was 0.027. This is less than the significant value of 0.05. So finally, I was able to reject the null hypothesis that there would be no difference between the time that it takes a Ty-to-go pin to dissolve a stain and the time it takes the dry gel on-the-go pin to dissolve a stain. So dry gel on-the-go is statistically significant in its ability to dissolve a stain compared to Ty-to-go. In conclusion, the first statement is what I just told you. We were able to reject that null, and there's a significant difference. And so I concluded that really your choice of instant stain remover is based on preference. If you want to use a wipe to remove a stain on your t-shirt, then you want to choose shell. If you want to have a pen with you to remove a stain, then you want to choose a dry gel on the go because it's statistically significant in its ability to remove a stain compared to Ty-to-go pen. And finally, I wanted to tell you all the convenience and the value. As you can tell, here's the sizes which I've been passed around so you can tell how big they are. The Shout Wipe and Go, a 12-pack, you can buy at Walmart for $3.49. And I thought this was interesting. If you bought the Ty-to-go pen, it only has 10 milliliters of solution inside of it, whereas the Dry Gel on-the-go pen has 20 milliliters, double, and it's only 3 cents higher. And it's definitely better able to remove the stain, so that's definitely the best buy that you get. And then finally, Clorox 2 Stain Water. If you want a laundry pre-treatment gel, then you want to choose this for $3.29. And that's it. Any questions?
I just have one. I want you to go back and restate because I'm getting confused. You've said several times in the last minute that it's better able to remove the stain. Is that what you mean to say?
No, I mean to say that it can remove a stain in a quicker amount of time.
Okay, because that
They
was...
both have the ability.
They both have the ability, so if all you cared about was if I put this on the stain, it'll eventually go away, you didn't care about time, buy the cheapest one, who cares? But if time is the constraint, then yeah, okay.
Yeah, as for my first null hypothesis, that there will be no difference in each brand and its stain remover's ability to dissolve the stain. I failed to reject that null hypothesis except for in the liquid foundation, which really none of them have the ability to remove it, but if it was a very small stain, Shout Wipe and Go could not remove it, whereas the Dry Gel on the Go and the Ty-to-go pen could remove the stain in less than 3 minutes, which is what I tested.
Same constellation, Clorox, most of
No,